Welcome to All About Change. Hey, All About Change listeners, it's Jay here. And I wanted to tell you my book, Find Your Fight, is now available in 800 Walmart stores. In the book, I talk about my biggest successes and those of others, and also failures as an activist, and my personal philosophy on how to make a difference. It's the perfect gift for friends and family who care about making a positive change in our society. Kaila Yu lived many lives before she decided to write a memoir. As an actress, musician, and import model, Kaila learned firsthand about the ways it is challenging to be Asian American, particularly as a woman. But she didn't write about that experience until seeing her fellow Asian Americans attacked and vilified in 2020. Now a travel, food, and culture writer, she has released a memoir titled Fetishized, A Reckoning with Yellow Fever, Feminism, and Beauty. In this book of essays, Kaila challenges the pressures Asian American women face to perform for the white male gaze and details some of the history surrounding that social pressure. With Fetishized, Kaila is shining a bright light on a specific prejudice in our country, and I'm excited to amplify that light with our conversation today. Kaila Yu, nice to meet you, and thank you for being my guest on All About Change.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
So first, I want to offer you a huge congratulations. I know you've been working on your book for 3 years, and it's a huge accomplishment to publish. I also just published a book on activism and how to be a more effective activist, and that took me years, and I know what the process is like. And so anyway, congratulations. On a personal level, I know it must be very gratifying to release your memoir, but I was wondering what the reception was like within the Asian American community at large. And have people responded in the ways that you had hoped that they would respond?
Yeah, well, the book's about the fetishization of Asian women, so I always knew it would resonate with Asian women because pretty much every Asian woman in America has experienced fetishization in some form. But what surprised me is that also Asian, white, and Black men have been reading the book and just being so surprised that, you know, they know a little bit about the concept, but not deeply. And just being able to see it from a female point of view is very eye-opening. Mm-hmm. They said, yeah, it's surprising to me that men are enjoying it because they weren't exactly the target audience.
So I know that you talk a little bit about the history and American soldiers, servicemen serving abroad in Asia and being exposed to what was called comfort women, or, you know, people that were serving in the sex industry. What developed from there? How did it come to America? And how did this, in your opinion, or what you write about, how did this become a thing in our culture where Asian American women in particular are fetishized?
Yeah, that's a hard word to pronounce. I'm finding like nobody can pronounce it. And I had to learn how to pronounce it for the audiobook. But one of the aspects of why I believe the fetishization of Asian women exists is because of military conquest and imperialism. Just basically because the bulk of American men encountering Asian women, say back in the early 1900s, was through prostitution, because basically after like the Philippines War, after World War II, after the Vietnam War, soldiers would be basically rewarded by what was called rest and recreation. Mm-hmm. And they would be sent to like a nice location, say Thailand, Bangkok, where they could rest and relax, and basically prostitutes were a part of the package. So just the idea that the Asian women they were meeting were prostitutes, and they weren't really meeting any real women as much, you know? So yeah, that's part of the reason.
And so that is what brought it over to America? Is that why you think that there's a huge, it's probably not an overwhelming part of the culture, but it's a significant enough part of our culture where it's a thing?
Yeah, so I think the soldiers bringing back that idea, but really it was media. So movies like Full Metal Jacket, like everybody's heard Me So Horny, right? But
Yeah.
not everybody knows that it's from that movie. And I think most people now haven't even watched the movie.
Mm.
And then that one phrase, "Me So Horny," was taken into the Two Live Crew song and like made viral basically. And everybody knows that, and they associate it with Asian women. And it's a common thing to just like be walking along the street. Maybe not so much these days, but when I was growing up and have someone yell "Me So Horny" at you and not even really know the history behind it. But another aspect is that the first Asian women who came to America were, I don't want to call them prostitutes because they were more like sexual slaves. Basically, when the Chinese first came over to basically do indentured servitude for our railroads and to build other projects, they were not allowed to bring any women with them. So they couldn't bring their wives, their sisters, their moms, or anything. And it's natural for men to want female company, and they were not allowed to date white women or any other women. That wasn't allowed at that time. So the gangs would import captured women or sold women
Right.
as prostitutes in horrible conditions where they had to live in like these little box rooms. And when they got too sick or got an STD, they were just thrown onto the street to die. But then like the community just thought of the Chinese and Asians as like dirty and diseased. And these slave women were like an example of it, even though they are no representation of like what an average Asian woman is like. So it was written about in like health journals, like how Asian prostitutes are spreading like these horrible diseases and like working with minors and just like being a scourge on society that we had to get rid of. So that was another contributor.
So I'm just very curious as to why we didn't progress as a society from that period in history, which is a terrible period in American history, to let's look at you personally. I mean, you grew up in a small town in California, pretty sheltered, a good family. And how did you like fall into this sort of mindset of, well, I need to present myself in a certain way in order to, for society to find me attractive? And why did you think that was important?
Yeah, so it's progressed so much now. It's like unbelievable how much Asian representation we have now. But when I was growing up, say in the late 90s and 2000s, there were barely any Asians on TV. What the hell is an import model? That is a question I get asked all the time. I mean, simply put, it's just pinup models, mostly Asian, that pose in front of JDM cars, Japanese domestic market. They're not so big anymore, but they were big in the early 2000s. Pretty much every Asian American knows what an import model, but nobody outside of the Asian community knows what one is. So we weren't like real models, like high fashion girls or anything. There's a hierarchy in modeling. Still, import models were significant in Asian American culture. I would argue that they defined the golden era of the import scene in the 2000s. Back then, we had almost zero representation on film and TV. Social media hadn't even really started yet. Our shows like Hot Import Nights became these huge phenomenons because Asian Americans didn't have anywhere else to gather. The import models became mini celebrities within the Asian American community. And the import racing scene eventually inspired the Fast and Furious franchise. Did you know any of this? The few ones you would see was, oh, there's a prostitute or a massage girl in some movie or a karate fighter. And I felt very invisible when I was growing up. I was very nerdy and shy, and I was naturally like looking for role models on film and TV and didn't find any. I liked boys, but they didn't like me at all. So I just felt very, very invisible. And then somewhere around that time, the movie Memoirs of a Geisha came out, and the book first. I read the book and I was absolutely in love with it. Like I probably read that book a dozen times growing up at least, because it was the first time ever seeing Asian women presented in an attractive light. Because I'd seen them like prostitutes, but that's like not, I don't know the word, but it's not ideal.
It's not something you aspire to be.
Yes, yes. And then Memoirs of a Geisha, they are still essentially in this telling of it, they're still prostitutes, just very high class ones. But then it was like, oh, it's at least it's aspirational because they are like living these glamorous lives. And then the movie came out, and both the movie and the book were like mega $1 million selling sensations that were huge influences on the culture. And then the author, Arthur Golden, was a man who was white, which is like totally fine, except that he presented very orientalized views of Asian women, very stereotypical views. And the funny thing is that the book is presented as a memoir, right? So a lot of people don't even know it was written by a white guy. They just thought an Asian woman wrote it, even though his name's like clearly on the book cover.
Right.
But the way it was presented was as that it's a beautifully written book and it's a gorgeous movie. But he presented the crux of the movie is that this young underage geisha is selling her virginity. And that's like the major theme of the movie. When you speak to any legitimate geisha, they say this is categorically not something we do.
Right.
But this was presented like every geisha does this when she comes of age. So then it's not surprising that, you know, Western men who may not have encountered Asian women too much in their lives have this like gorgeous presentation and kind of associate it with Asian women generally. Like it's not surprising to me.
Who is the intended audience for this memoir? People who have lived similar experiences to you, who need to feel seen, or the people who are doing the fetishizing, who need teaching to act like decent people?
Yeah, that wasn't the intention. It was for the women because my story is a very extreme example of like playing into fetishization. The average Asian woman has not, you know, done the things I've done. But every Asian woman I've spoken to at least has experienced fetishization, like some comment by a creepy guy or, you know, what I found kind of surprising was that there wasn't a single like book written about this topic was part of the reason I wrote it. And yes, for men that have the fetish, I don't know if I've spoken to any of them that have read the book. I've spoken to men who perhaps have a preference for Asian women. That's the big argument. Is it a preference or a fetish? And in the book, I explain very clearly that a preference is one thing, but a fetish, to my definition, is when a man dehumanizes a woman and treats her as a sexual object and a caricature and disposable. And I don't think that's most men that are dating Asian women. It's a small portion of the population, but they're very vocal.
Right. And what role do you think pornography plays into that?
Oh my God, pornography plays such a huge role. I think pornography is very damaging. Maybe not so much of the pornography I grew up with, because it was like still big movie production porns with like studio systems, right? But the style of pornography that's popular now is so violent and degrading to women. There's been studies written that the percentage of like shown for Asian women in pornography is higher than other ethnicities. And Asian women are very, very typically or commonly stereotyped into specific roles in pornography. So I think it's a huge factor these days.
So when you say that that your book is mainly geared towards other Asian women, when they talk to you about your book, what is the takeaway? Because you said most Asian American women have experienced some sort of fetishizing. So what is your takeaway? How are they internalizing the message that you're putting out there?
I don't know if there's like a specific message to Asian women, except that it was like giving voice to what they've all experienced. So it's like a collective being seen. I think the message, I guess, more is for a wider audience is that fetishization isn't harmless. Because I think a lot of the times when Asian women get angry at being fetishized, the fetishizers say, but it's a compliment. We like you. Like, why are you so mad about that?
Yeah.
But in the book, I kind of draw the line between where it originates in war and rape and ends in real life violence, not a rare portion of the time. And then also say the book's also for all women generally, because even if they haven't specifically been fetishized, I think pretty much all women have been objectified. And there's a lot of themes that are very similar to general objectification.
So you've had a really interesting life and career. I mean, from, a model to, doing some acting to being in a band solo, and then with a group, a journalist and a travel writer, and you've done so many different things with your life. And then you wrote this book. Did you feel that you were becoming an activist when you wrote the book? Was that something behind it, or when did you realize that you were talking about something that society needed to know about, and that you were becoming a leader in this field?
Yeah, I would say that that's totally accidental. I became a travel journalist after all the entertainment career stuff. And basically what happened was the pandemic happened, and the president basically called it the Chinese virus.
Right.
And, I grew up in a mostly white neighborhood, and I didn't experience outright racism really, and definitely not on a daily basis or anything like that. And suddenly it was like, what was disturbing, I think, for Asians to see was like, this was what people were thinking. Some people were thinking this whole time, but now they have permission to say it out loud because basically the president said, go ahead. We're all stuck at home watching these viral videos of like people shouting, go back to your country, to like people who were born here, or like beating elderly people to the ground and pushing them into subways. So
Right.
I think even though I was a travel and food journalist, there was no way as an Asian American I couldn't be also writing about these issues. So yeah, I started covering these issues on social media and in media writing during the pandemic. And then a year later, the Atlanta spa shootings happened. So that's when the young man went into 3 different, I think, massage parlors and shot 8 people dead, and 6 of them were Asian women. And
Right.
of course, I think when Asian women heard these details, they knew exactly that it was fetishized and sexual violence. And the media has never recognized that to be the case. Like, it's not. I don't think he was charged with sexual or racial motivation or whatever that is, or hate crime.
Mm-hmm.
Later was revealed that he had a sex addiction he was trying to get rid of. So yeah, the book was kind of born out of that. I never planned to write a memoir about my life. It kind of just came out of writing about these topics.
I think about that also because with activists, they're opening themselves up, and they're all getting, especially when people can hide in social media, they're getting terrible hate. But I always think, and I tell people, they don't really know you. They don't know your family. They don't know your friends. They really don't know who you are as a person. You become sort of like a figure out there that they can say something about. But, when it happens to me, I look at it and I'm like, well, they don't know me. They don't know me. It's not like, my best friend is saying this to me.
They'll never say it to your face. I mean,
Right.
like, say it to my face, and then we'll have things to talk about. Yeah. But like, yeah, it's so easy to just hide in your room anonymously and say the most horrible things.
So I want to take into account of all that you've experienced in your career, the healthy, the otherwise not healthy, changing your name, modeling, performing with Nylon Pink, and writing the memoir. Do you think you have a positive vision for what healthy Asian American representation in American culture should look like?
Yeah, I feel like we're seeing a lot of it now. There's been so many, okay, I always say it's so shocking to me to turn on the radio and hear Korean and like see young kids learning Korean just so they can understand Korean dramas and K-pop and sing K-pop. That has been so huge. And then so many movies that present multifaceted Asian people who are not perfect. Like Beef, I absolutely loved Beef because the characters were messy and real. They weren't like model minorities or they weren't highly sexualized. And nowadays, there's like countless Asian musicians and actors. Like I don't even know them all. Like literally when
Right.
I was growing up, I could name you every single, well-known. I was like basically Lucy Liu.
Do you think that she was transformative in our culture in terms of representation?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a chapter in my book titled Lucy Liu. And the thing is, like, some of the Asian American population believes, I guess including me because I wrote it, that she did play into some Asian stereotypes like the Dragon Lady. Lucy Liu says, does not agree, just to state that. So I don't know if she'll like that chapter. But what I say is that I was an actress too. I would have taken any of the parts she played in 1 second without question, as would any Asian actress at the time, because that's all that was like available. And also as actresses, we don't generally, not we, because I'm not an actress, but actresses don't generally get to write their roles, right? They're just working on what's available to them. What she's done is transcended that. She took that and now she is playing parts that are not at all stereotypical and are far beyond. So, and she broke the door wide open for all Asian actors, period, I think, with her career.
Do you now see yourself as an activist on this issue? Are you going to continue to speak out on this issue?
Yeah, I feel like I've not just specifically on fetishization, but just on women's rights. And I think it is important to speak on that right now, especially. I'm definitely aligning with and speaking to some like sexual violence or survivors companies and maybe speaking and aligning with speaking with them at different events next year. So yeah, it's definitely, I think everyone needs to speak about these things. Like everyone needs to be an activist right now, not just.
And now that you have a platform, you have the ability to really, speak out when it's called for. I mean, I read an article recently that you'd written about reality TV show in which, one of the characters was using derogatory language. And you wrote an article about that and explained, why it was an issue when some people were saying it wasn't an issue. Did you want to talk a little bit about, like why you wrote that article and what that was about?
Yes, that was definitely an online viral controversy, but it was about the dating show Love Island, which is probably one of the biggest shows right now. And there was a contestant on there named Sierra Ortega. And I actually don't think that she was trying to be insulting, but basically she was saying, she used the C word that refers to Chinese people's eyes. And she kind of like did the gesture, I believe, with the eyes and said, oh, my eyes are looking too C word. I need to get Botox or something. Said something to that effect. I'm totally paraphrasing. What was illuminating about that is that a lot of people don't realize that's a slur. Like people genuinely didn't know. And I think she genuinely didn't know. So it's unfortunate that I guess she said those words in relation to her eyes because she was basically saying my eyes look too Asian. I need to fix them. And she's apologized for it. And to me, it seemed very genuine. But I think it brought awareness to the fact that it is a slur.
I want to ask you about, because one of the things, I talk about in activism is, taking care of yourself. And you talk about getting into the competitive diving sport and then letting go of the competitive elements and enjoying the benefits of, diving and being in the ocean. First of all, I found that really interesting because I think physical activity is so important. And, you did challenge yourself and it sounds completely scary, the sport, to go down so deep and, but I guess what I'm asking you is this freedom that you've been able to experience and has helped you Did you also experience that freedom during the writing process?
Absolutely. Like, I do say that writing about these experiences has been one of the most healing experiences of my life, which was not the intention. Also, my editor, Amy Lee, was an Asian American woman, and she stood by me. Like, I turned in my book is a book of essays, and I turned in 4 essays to her, and we edited those. But then after that, I would write one essay at a time, go over it with her, then write the next one. She had a lot of input at that point, and I think that also helped the healing, to have a woman just witness all these stories and like have her feedback on them and have her be able to relate. So I think having her as editor was a big healing part of the process.
Kaila Yu, thank you so much for being my guest on All About Change. I think you wrote a very important book, and I hope people read it. Your journey is fascinating, and how you've turned that into activism and your own personal experience and to teach others, I think is so important. So thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for being part of the All About Change community. We aim to spark ideas for personal activism, helping you find your pathway to action beyond awareness. So thank you for investing your time with us, learning and thinking about how just one person can make the choice to build a community and improve our world. I believe in the power of informed people like you to drive real change, and I know that what we explored today will be a tool for you in that effort. All right, I'll see you in 2 weeks for our next conversation, but just one small ask. Please hit subscribe and leave us a comment below. It lets us know that you value this content, and it supports our mission to widely share these perspectives. If you're looking for more inspiration, check out this next video. I chose it for you, and I know you're going to enjoy it. I'm Jay Ruderman. Let's continue working towards meaningful change together.